Hey, folks, what's happening? It's Jason Priester along with Brad Sinkoff, Will Vandervoort. Welcome to the All Clemson Show. Our normal host, Zach Lentz, is otherwise engaged today. We'll try to muddle along without him. First and foremost, we see Will's decked out in the black and gold there, tribute to his now former quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, announced his retirement from the NFL today after a long, storied career. I know you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, obviously everybody knows me, Steeler Will on Twitter and all. Hello. You can see the Steeler stuff behind me and all that too. So, kind of a day we knew it was coming, but the finality of it kind of, always kind of hits you when man, since 2004, he's been the Steelers quarterback. And it's like, there's been some rough patches early on in his career, off the field stuff, obviously, but the last 10 years, he's kept himself clean. He's actually, came out and said he changed his life and became more a guy who, helped the community there in Pittsburgh and has done a lot of things with his faith and stuff like that. So, and then, his career has come to an end after winning 2 Super Bowls, finishing his career top 5 all-time in NFL history in passing yards, top 5 all-time in completions. One of the all-time winningest quarterbacks in the history of the game, kind of comes to a close now. And now the Steelers got to start looking ahead. I think he owns every single Pittsburgh Steelers passing record, whether it's single game, single season, career. He owns them all. I mean, it's amazing. Pittsburgh put out a list today, and it's like, literally, guys, it's like this long of a list of all the records he owns from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's kind of a sad day for the Steelers, but we'll move forward and try to find that next quarterback. Hopefully it doesn't take 25 years like it did when Terry Bradshaw retired. Hopefully we don't have to wait that long to find Ben's replacement, but we'll see.
Probably not. You're right, though. The finality of it was kind of strange because you knew he was – we all knew he was going to hang it up after this year. But to finally hear about it, I mean, Ben Roethlisberger has been, a contending quarterback in the NFL for it feels like forever now. It's kind of, the older we get, time just goes by so quick. But you think back to early on in his career, you just knew he was going to have a great career. And to me, he's a Hall of Famer. I judge it by, did I watch the guy play? Did I feel like I was watching a Hall of Famer? I think now in this stage, even though you could see the age catch up to him over the last 3 or 4 years, I still feel like the guy's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's first ballot probably. Now, the interesting thing is what I said, Canton's only like an hour and 40 minutes from Pittsburgh, okay? It's not a long drive. And Tom Brady might retire. And that means him and Ben would be in the same class. So there's 2 things the Hall of Fame needs to think about that year. First of all, do you want Tom Brady to overshadow Ben like he will do from a national perspective? Do you want that? Secondly, do you want Tom Brady to get booed by the Steelers fans? Because if Ben Roethlisberger is getting in that Hall of Fame class with Tom Brady, there's going to be way more Steeler fans there than anybody else.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh fans, as great as Tom Brady is, he cost the Steelers 3 trips to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to celebrate Tom Brady in the same year I get to celebrate Ben Roethlisberger. He's going to get booed. I think the NFL needs to think about that.
No, I think that would be classic. I think Tom comes back for one more year. Just my opinion.
I hope you're right, because then that solves all problems.
Exactly. All right, yeah. Jason. Enough of entertaining Steeler Will. Let's get to what people really want to hear about today.
We'll talk some Clemson football. Over the past few years, the tight ends have not been involved in the passing game as much as they had been in previous years. In 2015, 2016, the last 3 or 4 years, they've kind of taken a back seat to the receivers. Looking ahead to next season, do you guys see that changing? I know Will did a story on this that just published today. I think it was, wasn't it? Or yesterday?
Yeah, today.
Do y'all see that changing looking ahead, with Davis Allen and now Jake Brennanstole on the roster?
I guess I'll go ahead and start. So what, you look at the last couple of years there of Jordan Leggett's career, he had 30-something catches, almost 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then his last year, 40-something catches, 700 yards, 8 touchdowns. Clemson hasn't matched that or come even close to matching that really at all since then. A couple years ago, you saw, where Allen, Galloway kind of combined for 44 catches for 621 yards and 6 touchdowns. You thought, okay, that's a sign. Maybe they're kind of, turning the corner, getting more productive. But this year, man, the tight ends, 5 tight ends, including 28 catches from Davis Allen, combined for 37 catches, only 304 yards and 4 touchdowns. They weren't creative in how they got the ball to tight end. Allen only had 208 yards on 28 receptions. It was just bad. And so to me, it's just like, can Clemson figure a way to use the tight end? Because Dwayne Allen, I think, is talented, and I think Jake's talented. But they got to find ways to get creative and get these two guys more involved in the passing game downfield than they did this past year.
Well, I will push back a little bit. I do think Davis Allen was an important key piece in the offense this year. Now, did he have huge numbers in production? Nobody had huge numbers in that passing game.
That's true.
0. But in terms of relative to how the passing game really was in reality, I thought Davis Allen was a pretty big part of it. To me, it was clear as day he was the best tight end on the field. I talked about that all offseason, that, forget Galloway, forget these other guys. Focus on Davis Allen. He's the guy who they can use the most. And he's not going to be Jordan Leggett. I mean, I think that's the thing. Like that era, getting a guy like that just doesn't come along very often for Clemson. I don't know. Those kind of tight ends are out there easy to find anyway. They sort of emerge organically somehow, like a Travis Kelce, type of guy. Just there's not a lot of them out there. But what I think is important is that this room might be one of the most talented we've seen in a while. It doesn't feel like there's a big hole. I think when you look at, as we go through the classes, you got Davis Allen, you got Sage Enos, and then you got Brenningstool. Like those 3 guys combined, like they're all split up into different years. I think Clemson's set up to have some production. I think we got to get over the whole, Leggett era. Like I just don't think that's going to happen. Dwayne Allen era. I don't think that's going to happen again. But I do think they can be productive in their own way and give Clemson another threat, a different method of moving the football. The teams, well, you don't need your tight end to beat Travis Kelce and George Kittle. You need your tight end to simply have the threat of being that. And I think that's why it's worded the way it is. Will the tight ends be a threat again? Not a productive, huge pass catchers. Will they be a threat? If Clemson gets back to that, it opens up all kinds of other things in the offense. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I'm like y'all. I'd like to see the tight ends used a little bit more, maybe attack the middle of the field some. And I kind of thought they'd be used a little bit more this year. You don't know how much that was due to quarterback play or play calling scheme or whatever. But, Davis Allen averaging 7.5 yards per catch, that number needs to be higher, no doubt about it.
I agree. To Will's point, for sure. Will, let me ask you this. Do you think with Kyle Richardson coming in, with Brandon Streeter calling the plays now, do you expect maybe some changes in the way they use the tight ends? I know I feel like I've asked Tony Elliott every year, hey, have you gone back and watched what the NFL's doing? Are you picking some things through what you've seen out of that league in terms of tight ends? And he says, oh, yeah. Every year you say, oh, yeah, of course. But then you just didn't seem to see it. Do you think there's going to be a little bit of a change with Streeter and Richardson?
I think in the last couple of years with Tony Elliott, he got hung up on the 50-50 ball guys. He wanted to throw that ball, and I understand it. When you had T. Higgins and Mike Williams and those guys, you wanted to just throw it up there and let those guys go get it and make plays. And it seemed like they were just really more vertical, especially the Trevor Lawrence years. Yeah. You remember like the Deshaun Watson years, they used the middle of the field well. Where you had Leggett and you had Hunter Renfrow, and it seemed like that really opened up the outside for them. It didn't seem like they had that, and they really haven't had that. They didn't have it with Trevor Lawrence, other than the one year they had Renfrow. They just weren't very productive using the middle of the field the last 2 years he was there. Last year, we don't know who to blame that on, really, right? I mean, it was just bad all the way around. And so I think they have to figure a way, though. The tight ends can be a weapon, I think, to the middle of the field, especially in today's game where the rules have allowed the middle of the field to be more open than it ever has been before. So I think Brandon Streeter, I think he can be a guy. I think Tony Elliott kind of got caught up too much in the vertical passing game.
Sideline to sideline.
Sideline to sideline. And I understand it because of the talent he had out there. Kind of like they forgot about these guys in the middle. I think they got to make sure, like you said, Brad, Dwayne Allen is too good of a Davis Allen is too good of a talent to just not get the ball to. You got to start using him more and find creative ways to use him because I think he can be a big weapon. And I think he can ease some of the pressure off a guy like DJ when he knows he's got a reliable target there in the middle of the field.
Yeah, speaking of the tight ends, I'd like to see them be more of a safety valve in the offense. I think Brennan Stool and Allen could be that for DJ if he improves his play. I'm really excited about the potential of Brennan Stool. He's a young guy with a lot of upside.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of young guys, it's a big recruiting weekend this weekend in Clemson. The Tigers are hosting their Elite Junior Day. And it is highlighted by a ton of defensive linemen and highly touted defensive linemen. You got guys like Peter Woods, Kelby Collins, Vic Burley, KJ Sampson, Keldrick Falk, Darren Reed, Derek LeBlanc. All those guys are scheduled to be on hand. And this is going to be a critical class for Clemson when it comes to recruiting along the defensive line. I know I highlighted Peter Woods here. He's a guy that's been on campus, I think, 4 times already. I still think he's going to be a hard pull out of Alabama. It's hard to pull those guys out of there, but there are a lot of talented defensive linemen in that state in this cycle, and Nick Saban can't sign them all.
Yeah. This is go ahead, Will. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, this is a critical class for Dabo, and especially like you mentioned on the defensive front, when you consider who they're going to lose next year, right? I mean, they're going to lose Brzee. He's going to go, we feel like. Tyler Davis is going to be gone. Miles Murphy is going to be gone. Xavier Thomas is going to be gone. KJ Henry is going to be gone. Justin Maskell probably going to be gone. So, you're going to lose pretty much everybody on that defensive front next year. So, yeah, you're right, JP. They got to go in there and try to see if they can just sell Clemson to a lot of guys here. And that's where having Nick Easton's going to help, I think, because first of all, Nick's a very personable guy, and I think the recruits are going to like him. They're going to like his personality. And then when you look at his track record and what he's coached in the NFL, he's played in the NFL, he's won a Super Bowl. I'm sure he's going to have that Super Bowl ring, shining this weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see if Clemson can impress some of these guys, because they're going to have to, like you said, this is just too important to mess it up.
I'm really interested to hear from the recruits after this is over, and maybe from some other folks who kind of get kind of the inside information on what goes on, because like this is going to be a very different feel, isn't it, to Clemson's junior day? I mean, we're talking no Brent Venables there, no Todd Bates there. Like some of these guys now, they don't know that, they didn't maybe come around when Todd Bates and Brent Venables were there, but I feel like the overall strategy and just how they handle the day, it's going to be managed, by some different people. I'm curious to hear from the recruits what it's like and how it compares to some of the other, kind of big recruiting events they've been to. But yeah, this is obviously with the way numbers are, Clemson's going to assign more players in this 2023 class than they will in the 2022. So that this is going to be a really big chance to go ahead and start, kind of getting that bug in the ear, working on getting some commitments coming up down the road. So I would say it's absolutely huge weekend. Plus, you got in here about the commitments that Clemson's got right now. 4 guys now, I believe, in this class. How many more, Jason, do you think Clemson signs before Wednesday?
Let's see. I think they're going to sign T.J. Dudley, Caden Story. I think up to 4 more.
Wow.
Depending on what Andrew Paul does. I think they got 5 open spots right now left.
So eight potential total on signing day on Wednesday, because I'd heard at least 7 was the goal coming out of the offices there.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be 8. I think a lot of it just hinges on what happens with Andrew Paul. I haven't heard yet whether he's going to visit Oregon, Notre Dame, or Georgia this weekend. As we know, Georgia got in and offered him on Sunday, but they're getting in real late here. They really didn't start recruiting him at all until they offered. So Clemson's got a leg up here. I still feel real good about the spot Clemson's in. I kind of like Story. He's going to Florida this weekend. I think it's going to take a really big effort from Florida or whoever, Florida with Story and whoever, Paul visits this weekend to win those guys over. I think in the end, Clemson's going to get them all.
JP, I want to ask is, with Clemson having, signing possibly, like you said, 7 to 8 guys, will they have any surprises will they be any like big time, like, whoa, guys that they could sign on National Signing Day or get signed before Wednesday?
I don't think so. I know that's happened in the past. I really don't expect it to happen this go around. I haven't. If it is going to happen, they are keeping it very well under wraps. I have not heard one peep about any surprise, or any other guys that might visit this weekend or surprise visitors last weekend. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Will, what do you think about Clemson's strategy? You've seen Dabo Swinney only a couple times. He kind of had to come in and close late on some recruiting classes. What do you think about this idea? Because the numbers are so low right now. He just needs some warm bodies to fill some scholarships. What do you think about getting the 3-star guys? Because everybody's like, oh, go to the transfer portal, but there's 3-star guys in the transfer portal. I mean, Dabo Swinney's MO is to get the younger player and develop them than the more experienced player. What do you think about his strategy? Do you think it's going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you do, you have to look at what they've done. And Clemson has taken the Grady Jarretts and made them,
the
all
big
Beasleys,
the big Hunter Renfros. Yeah.
There's a great track record. Even, just recently, you can look at a guy like Isaiah Simmons, made him into where he's like an all-pro almost, now in the NFL. And there's a guy that nobody knew about, 3-star guy. So don't look at the numbers so much as look at Clemson's track record. I think Dabo and his staff have proven through the years they can take these players and build them and make them, as LaVon likes to always say on our podcast, make them 5-stars by the time they're done with their careers. So I think that's kind of what you got to go by right now, Brad, if you're a Clemson fan. That's how you got to look at this. Don't look at it like, oh, there's a guy, like you said, made a very good point. Why do you want to get a 3-star that is used product out of a portal when you can bring a 3-star in and then make him your guy and turn him into maybe an all-ACC, all-American caliber player?
Yeah, I think to me that's the argument against the transfer portal, and I'm not anti-portal at all in any way. But I think the pushback would be like, you're Clemson. You are known for developing talent. You're known for building up through recruiting. If you need to fill a spot right away, you need a starter right away. You're better off going to the transfer portal and getting that 3-star than you are out of the recruiting. But if you're putting together your numbers and building your roster up, it makes just so much sense just to take the 3-star young player and, as you say, put him in and develop him, because I don't know if you're going to get a benefit from a 3-star linebacker that's going to come in and maybe not even play at all. So you're kind of wasting your scholarship. And at the same time, Clemson is so development driven that there's no reason, I think, to just completely abandon what you're doing. The transfer portal is for what you need it to be. Alabama needed a starting running back. Alabama needed some receiver help. Alabama went and got the best players in that portal to help them in those areas. If you have that great need, I understand it. But I think we got to keep that in mind. The portal's for what your particular situation is.
I think next year, we just talked about the defensive line. And I think if you're Clemson, maybe next year you might see Clemson reach in and get a couple D linemen that are there because they're going to need it. Because I just went through the depth earlier. They're going to lose all those guys. We all know it. I mean,
Great
right?
point.
I mean,
yeah.
They're going to lose them. And so it's not totally like, yeah, they got some guys on campus now. Maybe they turn out and they'd be good, but you might need to go get it. So maybe next year you kind of, as you said, as need, you go in and grab a couple guys because you think you need that and you can go get them like Alabama has done here the last couple of years. But, this transfer portal is going to be like free agency when it first started for the NFL. Some teams are going to use it and they're going to build their team through free agency. Some teams are still not going to. They'll use it here or there, but they're going to stick to the draft. Clemson might just be one of those teams that say, you know what, we're still going to do what we do. We're going to build through recruiting, and then we'll use the portal here and there. I think that's what you're going to see for Clemson. It works for, like if you look at the NFL, the Patriots and Steelers never really use free agency. They build their teams through the draft. They've had a lot of success. But then there's other teams that build their team through the free agency, and they win Super Bowls too. So it depends on the team and what your philosophy is, but both were proven to work. I think you're going to see that this way too.
The moral of the story here for Jason, and I know you can attest to this, you can't talk with recruiting without talking about the transfer portal. They're so tied together now. It's they're not two separate things anymore.
No, not at all. And depending on who you ask, you get two different answers because everybody's got an opinion and they've got strong opinions.
Yep, you're right.
Speaking of strong opinions, we will turn our attention to Clemson basketball. Tigers come up just a bucket short against Duke the other night in Durham. Heartbreaking loss for Clemson. We have talked about the basketball program in depth here the last couple shows, I think we all kind of expected Clemson to go up there and maybe get run out of the court. That's not what happened. They might have played their best game of the season against, the best competition they've seen to date. Were y'all as surprised as I was, Brad?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Clemson played probably their best game of the year and lost. I mean, that's what happens when you play a top, echelon team like Duke. You can do that. You can play really great and still not pull out the victory. But I don't want to build any moral victory conversations here. I don't really buy that in any way. I don't know what you take away from it if you're Clemson, but it did show me that when they come up with a good game plan and they stick to it, and everybody's focused and buys into it, and you put Chase Hunter in the lineup to start, some good things can happen. So that, to me, would be sort of like a kind of a good takeaway, just realizing that, hey, this coaching staff still knows what they're doing, and these players, when they've got a good game plan, they can execute it. Because that's the only way you stay in a game against Duke, is you have a good game plan, and I thought Clemson did that. But, hey, still lost the game, and they need some wins right now in a big way.
Yeah, they need huge wins right now, and that would have been a great one because you would have got a tier 1 win on the road, and that would have been huge for their resume. But I thought it was the best basketball they've played collectively since the Auburn game in 2018.
Wow.
To me, I mean, when you look at the way they executed, the way they out-rebounded Duke. Now, Brad, would you have thought with that lineup Duke had that Clemson would out-rebound them by 8 rebounds?
No, and win the battle in the paint.
Exactly. I would not have thought that. Brownell came in with a great game plan. Like you said, they stuck with it, and they gave themselves a chance to win the game. Also, let's be honest, it's not like Duke played bad either. That was a good basketball game. Both teams played at a high level, and Duke just made one more play. I think in the end, Duke just had too many great players making plays at the end.
That's exactly right. It's not like Duke went 2 for 15 from the three-point line. They hit, what was it, 10 threes? I think it was. Clemson hit 11.
20.
Yeah. Shoot 50% from behind the arc, and they barely win. That means Clemson played really well.
Exactly. And they didn't turn over the ball. There's only 12 turnovers to Duke. I think 10 for Clemson. So it wasn't like there was a ton of turnovers either. I think this is a win. I'm with you. There's no moral victories. But Clemson knows now what they can do. They know they can play with the big boys in the conference. And I think that's going to help them when they got, 7 of their last 11 games are at Little John. Yeah. If they can hold serve, and that's what they just need to do, hold serve, maybe steal a win on the road here or there, and get to 8, maybe 9 wins down the stretch here, these last 11 games, then they put themselves at least in the conversation. And I think if you're Clemson, you always just want to be in the conversation of making the NCAA tournament. So we'll see. There's not saying it's going to happen or not, but I think they have a chance to turn this season around still on the back end.
A lot of basketball to play.
Yeah, still a lot of basketball to play. I thought that was Clemson's best 40 minutes of basketball all season long, no doubt about it. I mean, we've seen them play well in stretches, but for the most part, they don't play well for the entire 40 minutes. You go up to Durham, though, you know you're going to get hosed on the calls and stuff, but to see Clemson only go to the foul line one time, that's a little surprising. You know you're going to not shoot as many free throws, get as many opportunities as Duke's going to get. But I think I saw Tim Beret say the other day, only one time ever in Clemson's history before the other night had they only shot one free throw in a game. So that had to be extremely frustrating for Brownell and those guys.
Oh, there's no question. And, some of that was style. Some of that was game plan. Clemson didn't want to attack the rim. Clemson didn't want to challenge Mark Williams, which if you've seen Mark Williams, it's a good idea not to challenge and attack him. He's a true 7-foot shot blocker. So, when you're not going to the basket, you're not going to get as many calls. But still, you're right. To see one free throw attempted an entire game, I mean, I'm not saying Clemson should go on the line 15 times. I don't think the game warranted that. Mm-hmm. But they should have gone to the line at least 4 or 5.
The crazy thing is I thought it was a well-called game.
Yeah, it was.
I really do think it was a well-called game. However, there were a couple occasions when, I think there's one play where P.J. Hall goes to the basket. He makes the shot. He totally looked like he got fouled, and there's no call. Might should have been an and one there, in my opinion. There's another call where Hunter Tyson was going up for a shot. He kind of got hit on the way up. Thought you should have got a call there. There's probably maybe 3 or 4. I thought Clemson should have had 5 trips to the free throw line, and maybe that's it. So I didn't think it was blatantly oh my gosh, there's totally hosing them here. It was just surprising that they shot 71 balls and they only had 1 trip to the foul line, and it came by, of all people, Alex Hemingway, by the way, you know, the guy who never goes to the foul line hardly because he's a 3-point shooter. So, you know, it was kind of crazy, but that's basketball sometimes. Yeah, you're mad if you're a Clemson fan that it didn't happen, but at the same time, I don't think I remember anybody really complaining about how the game was called because I thought it was called pretty evenly.
It was consistently called. That's
Yes,
the word
exactly.
I would use, consistently called. I think the other factor that some people are forgetting too, go back and watch the last 2.5, 3 minutes. There wasn't a lot of stoppages. Guys were not hacking. They weren't in a situation because it was such a close game that they wanted to foul. Everybody just wanted to try to find a way to get the best shot, and they weren't necessarily, like Clemson isn't trying to, add time to the clock by fouling and adding possessions. You know what I mean? Like it just flowed. That last 2.5, 3 minutes went by almost in real time.
I tell you what, as a sports writer, one of my favorite kind of games to cover.
Yeah. Good point. But at the same time, I do understand why Brad Brownell would say something, and that shouldn't. Yeah. It is his job to fight for his team to get calls. That's what he does. Every coach in America does it. You can't get mad at him for saying something about it.
Absolutely, because we saw Krzyzewski talking to the referees at every timeout during the game. So he's doing the same thing.
40-something years, Will.
Yeah. Yes, he has been. He's been doing it 40 years.
Not anymore. Not anymore. This is it. The last one.
Well, it's almost time for baseball season. The Tigers kick off practice tomorrow. Monty Lee and his guys will be on the field. We'll get to talk to those guys tomorrow before practice a little bit. Heading into the season, Will, what are your expectations for the program this season?
Man, I don't know. Like, I'm going to tell you what the expectations of Clemson baseball are, and I don't have to really tell anybody this, but it's to make the NCAA tournament and contend for a College World Series. That's the expectation of this program. Now, is this program there? I don't think so. I don't think it's there. But I think Monty Lee has to have his troops ready to expect that because, this is a big year for Monty. I mean, let's just go ahead and call it out, man. It's a big year for Monty. They had their first losing season since 1957. Just having a winning season ain't going to cut it. He's got to make the NCAA tournament. He's got to compete in the NCAA tournament. This is a huge year for Monty Lee and his program. And so my expectations for this team are to, contend for a division title and try to put themselves in position to make the tournament and show some life inside the tournament. We'll see what happens. But I don't think that's unfair, Brad, to you. Do you think that's unfair for me to expect that?
No, not at all. That's the baseline expectation, in my opinion. Imagine if you were asked that question 10 years ago, Will. What's the expectation? You would have said Omaha. That's the only word that would come out of your mouth. Omaha. Now you're saying the expectation is just to make the NCAA tournament. You didn't even say make Omaha. You said contend and have a chance to make it to Omaha. Yeah. That's how far down the expectations have come at Clemson. They fallen, guys. It's a reality. The expectations in that program aren't what they used to be. You just said it, Will. You weren't even trying to say that necessarily, but that's where we are right now, and I totally agree with you. This is not a team you look at and go, Omaha. They have to make Omaha or bust.
I had a student tell me the other day they didn't even realize Clemson was a elite baseball program. They're like, I was telling them the history, and they're like, really? That I didn't realize they were that good. That I didn't think Clemson was an elite baseball program. That you know what they thought? They thought Clemson, and I mean no disrespect here to men's basketball in any way, but they said I thought Clemson baseball was like Clemson basketball.
Wow, not even close.
Exactly. Wow, and it's not even close. Clemson, as we know, Brad, Clemson in South Carolina baseball, one of the top 4 programs in the country for a long period of time, decades, and now Clemson's not there anymore, and it's kind of sad to be honest with you.
Neither one of them are ranked. There's no team in the state ranked, Jason. I mean, when's the last time you saw that?
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we saw that, because Coastal Carolina is known for having good baseball programs under Coach Gilmore. Same like y'all just touched on with South Carolina and Clemson. It's very odd to see no baseball program in the preseason rankings. But I'm like Will, I think this is a big season for Monty Lee. They have got to take some strides forward. Got to develop some consistency in that rotation. And most of all, they've got to stay healthy. They've just had problems staying healthy at times over the past couple of years, especially those arms. Got to keep those arms healthy some way, somehow. And to me, that's where it all starts.
How about this? They need an identity. They never had one last year. They never knew who they were. They just seem to just kind of just float along all season long, dealing with different rotations, dealing with different lineups, just trying to figure out something that would work. They didn't know if they wanted to be a home run hitting team. They didn't know if they wanted to be a small ball team. They sort of tried to mix the two together. And there they asked some guys who just weren't capable of doing one or the other to do one or the other at the plate. And I think it messed up their whole offense. They first and foremost find an offensive identity of decide who you want to be as a team. If you want to use speed, if you want to work counts, whatever it is, find that and do it. Stick with it. That would be my first expectation of Clemson baseball.
Yeah, and I like what Monty said a couple weeks ago when he was on this podcast, and he said, that he learned a lot about himself and, how to handle things. And he said, he went and learned that, maybe I need to be more patient with my starting pitching. And maybe you just stay with it a little bit longer with guys and let them try to figure their way through some things. Also, in his lineup, stay with things. Don't give up on it so soon that, you see a guy struggling for a weekend and you take him for being the leadoff guy and you move him down to the 7 hole. Maybe stay with it a little bit more and see if they can fight themselves out of slumps and things like that. Used, Avant there at NC State as a guy he leaned on to say, hey, look, how did you get things turned around last year at NC State where you went on that nice run and went to Omaha? So that I kind of learned, and maybe we'll see that this year, and maybe that pays dividends with this young Clemson baseball team because they got some talent, guys. There's no doubt they got some talent. It's just a matter of can they believe in themselves enough to get it done.
Yeah, this. I'm sorry, Jason, but this looks like an NCAA team. Like just from on paper, I think they're going to be good enough. But boy, it just feels like it's going to take something. Somebody's going to really have to take over in some key leadership positions. They didn't have that leadership a year ago.
Yeah, they sure didn't. I think you hit on it a minute ago when you were talking about identity. I know that's a term we use a lot for offenses in football, but I think it sums it up pretty well, what Clemson lacked last year on that baseball team as far as at the plate on the offensive side of the ball. And they definitely need an identity this year, settle on one and stick with it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, that's all we got for this week, guys. We appreciate you tuning in to the All Clemson Show. For Brad, Will, I'm Jason. We will see y'all next week. Don't forget to please subscribe, like our YouTube channel, share the videos, please. Subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. That's where you'll be able to find us.
Go to allclemson.com. We're going to have coverage all week for basketball, baseball, and football.
And recruiting. And also, don't you want to see these pretty faces more? You should that's the only reason right there. You should subscribe.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Even Steeler will.
All right. Until next week, guys. We'll see y'all later.
All right. Later, man.
Later.